How is Percy Jackson different from other 12-year-olds?
It's a Greek god versus father.
Will Percy complete his quest successfully?
Who really stole the gold?
Find out as Red and Red Real Reviews dives into Greek mythology with Disney Plus's Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
My God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Ahoy, ladies! Didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor with me? I'll be your captain.
I don't think we figure out exactly who we are all at once.
So it learns information about me?
Now, say my name.
Dude, if you think that's bad, go to Google Earth and type in your address.
And I knew exactly what to do, but in a much more real sense, I had no idea what to do.
Maybe I don't want you to feel like you stand out.
Sometimes you gotta work a little so you can ball a lot.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim. Millions of families suffer every year.
A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of a sheep.
Michael! Oh, that's funny. Michael!
Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
But it's always a good idea to demonstrate to your coworkers that you are capable of withstanding a tremendous amount of pain.
The Lannisters send their regards.
Staring at this board for days.
Matt, half the employees in this building have been made up. This office is a goddamn ghost town.
Dracarys.
Okay, so this is episode 10. We've been going for a while here. So this is kind of a fun one. This is our first
We hit double
teen
digits.
show.
We hit double digits.
So not only do we reach double digits, so we're aging, but we're taking on a teenager show.
Yeah.
We're becoming
It's gonna be
teeny
like
boppers.
Clarissa Explains It All or something.
Oh,
Mean Girls.
geez. Nah, 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 nah. I used to think that show was so annoying, but it is kind of iconic.
Yeah. Or I guess if it Mean Girls, it would be Mean Gods.
Mean Gods. I like that. That's what they need to do. Instead of making another remake, that's what they got to do.
Just 2 spinoffs. Just 2 spinoffs.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is actually, this was originally a book series, and then there were movies that came out, I want to say in 2010 or so. So it's been a while since the movies came out, but I was kind of interested to find out that you had never even seen the movies.
No, and I know that's might seem odd because, like, I like yourself, I'm a mythology nerd, and Greek was like I remember the old Macintosh games in elementary school that you would play, where they would like teach you little things about the history, and they throw in like an arithmetic puzzle in between, and they would like do it illustrating the problems with the gods. So I don't know if maybe it's just because like the whole what's that spin-off from Harry Potter that's pretty popular that I just kind of never got into. So I don't know if maybe I just disassociate Percy Jackson.
It's not a Fantastic Beasts or whatever.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I feel like Harry Potter is better, but we're actually going to talk about Harry Potter today because I feel like it is worthy of a comparison to Percy Jackson. Not the fact that there's books, but just in some of the driving principles of the show. So I kind of jotted down some differences between, I didn't read the books, full disclosure, and the movies I saw several years ago, probably almost a decade at this point, at least. So for me, I was trying to suss out, okay, what are the differences between the movies and the show? What I came to learn is that the writer of the books really didn't like the movies because he didn't have any sort of control over them being made. They kind of like shut him out. So they didn't do it how he would have done it. And I guess he was kind of angry about that. So he actually had a big hand in this show for Disney Plus. So the main thing that he wanted to see is he wanted to make the Percy character younger, because that was his intention, because in the books I believe he's 12. So that's what they wanted to do, is match the show with the books. They didn't like the fact that in the, Logan Lerman, he's a fantastic actor, great actor, but he was a teenager. They just started it at the point of being teenagers in the movies. So I did like the fact that, there are some differences here between the movies and the show, but that doesn't really matter. You have Logan Lerman, who has dark hair. You have Walker Scobell is the boy who plays Percy, and he's got these like golden curly locks.
Yeah.
So you have some physical differences right there. Not to
sounds
mention
like that sounds like our Tom Cruise Alan Richardson thing.
and yeah, and it's, so there's some physical differences for sure. You have Percy definitely going through puberty. He's got the voice to prove it. So that was a little bit different. And then they went and, this is Disney Plus. This is 2024. So they went for the inclusivity angle. A lot of the parts casted were African American. So they had Annabeth played by an African American girl. And in the movies, Alexandra Daddario played Annabeth. So very different from what we've seen in the movies. So yeah.
Which I think I would have rather not known that, because Alexandra Daddario is gorgeous and I love her.
Yeah. I'm kind of mystified by her too. Like, her eyes are just like too striking. It's almost like, how everyone in the world is or was just enthralled by Megan Fox or something like that. Like, I feel like Alexandra Daddario is just like, she's kind of like the one that I'm like, wow, her eyes are just really pretty.
Yeah, they're like captivating.
Yeah.
Like
and
big and round.
Yeah, so I just felt like that curiosity and that like the striking eyes, the eyes are the window to the soul. So I feel like she provided a cool look into the Annabeth character. So this is, a whole different group. I actually, we'll get into the character relationships, but I actually enjoyed Grover. I thought he was hilarious and he's a cute kid. And I really liked the dynamic of the three kids. They had to carry basically the whole show.
Yeah, I kind of was trying to figure out something to call them. Like the trio seems too basic, but it kind of fits. They're the trio.
The Three Musketeers, yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah, they're go ahead.
The actors dynamic between, like, it felt like, even though this was season 1, it felt like they knew each other very well already.
Yes, I was, scrolling on social media and I saw it was BuzzFeed or one of those outlets. You know how they put together all the cast videos of them like playing games, like how well do you know your cast members and things like that. They had the three of them playing games. Like, they were just adorable. I just love them together. So I love their dynamic.
Fast forward about, I don't know, 10 years, we'll be on what's that British show, Graham Norton on the couch.
I love Graham Norton. I want to be on Graham Norton someday. That's my goal.
Show got to take off. Let's do it.
I love that. So anyway, so going into this, we have the books in mind that we don't know that much about. We have the movies in mind that we don't know too much about, nothing about. So so going into that, I was a little bit worried that, is this a show that's just too young for us? Are we going to think it's lame? Are we going to be interested in it, or is it going to be too young for us? That's what I was worried about. What about you?
Well, it's funny. I wasn't expecting you to take that angle, but it's interesting you bring that up, because another show that we're both into in the past, and frequently talk about and chomping at the bit for the next season to come up, of course, is Outer Banks. And that kind of had, although they're a little older than the Percy Jackson cast, the same type of like teenage, super young adult cast and feel to the flow of the show. And I guess it's a decent comparable to this show as well, even though these kids are a little younger.
Yeah, so
obviously there was absolutely no hesitation as far as liking that show. So
I know I do feel a little bit conflicted too with watching shows that take place in high school too, because it just seems like so far away for me. So I feel like I can't relate to the daily struggles that these kids and characters in this show deal with. So this was a little bit weird too, being like, wow, they're literally like 7th grade. So it took me back a while, but I do think that there were some deeper principles here. It wasn't all just trivial, stupid kid stuff. You know what I mean?
well, redheads don't age, so we could still pass as junior.
Yeah, although we are in our mid-30s, I could still probably pass for maybe an 8th grader. Not sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I worried that maybe it was, and it's Disney Plus. You know, you never know what you're going to expect with a show on there. They kind of have two audiences on Disney Plus. It's either straight up adults or straight up kids, right? So this kind of falls somewhere in the middle, the older kids.
They kind of dipped into that quite a bit with taking on the Star Wars stuff and their expansion of the Marvel universe post Avengers, but then they do shows like this, and then they do shows like what was the name of it? I think it was called Secret of Sulphur Springs or something like that, which had a similar type of age to the main characters as Percy Jackson. So yeah, I could see how seeing a show like this and looking at the main characters, like, oh, okay, this might be a little young, but still enjoyable. Just kind of put young kids in kind of adult situations, adventure like.
Yeah, and we did have the Greek mythology thing on our side too, which was of interest to both of us. So
Magnet.
Yeah, so it reeled us in. So let's start with the relationships in the show. Were there any moments or interactions that made you laugh, made you say, "Oh, that's so sweet," or were you just loved the drama or the fighting or the battles?
So funny enough, I mean, I was a little nervous when they started going down this road because it is a kid show and the cast is very young. So I figured, this is going to be pretty PG. But you could kind of sense some romanticism going on at certain points between Percy and Annabeth. And they didn't like each other at first, or like, not that they didn't like each other, but they kind of seemed like two alphas and not really wanting to give up the lead scepter, for lack of a better word. And between the two of them, like, you started to see them kind of grow more fond of each other, and then you start to wonder, well, are these two, is this going to be like a budding teenage romance type of deal? And then you're also thinking, like, I don't know if I necessarily want to see that because they're super young, like, kind of just let them kind of be kids and go about this adventure, and maybe in like by season 3 or something, things start to click, kind of like Hermione and Ron Weasley type of thing.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't kind of go too much. It was kind of like an unspoken thing, so I kind of liked how they handled that. But the two of them, I think their growth between their characters was very nice, and it definitely sets up more. Hopefully, as the series continues on, plenty of room to grow.
Yeah, I liked that it wasn't so obviously a romance. It really was mostly about friendship. It was about Grover being Percy's protector. It was about both of them kind of being his protector. So even the fact that towards the end when they're in Vegas, I love
that whole sequence.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes, but Annabeth and Percy were just kind of paired up, and then it was kind of Grover going wild on his own and trying to resist things. And it was nice, the fact that it's not about a crush on each other. It's about, okay, let's work together to get out of this situation or to get further in this other situation. They're really trying to help each other. And it wasn't puppy love, and it wasn't predictable, and it wasn't just playing the card of let's make everything a relationship.
And it feels more organic that way too. When you would figure at some point eventually they're going to get to that point. So by kind of slowing the pace a little bit in that, it feels like it would be a more organic relationship whenever the show does get to that point.
Yes. And there were so many moments with Grover and Annabeth that I liked. The Vegas one was a highlight, but there were a lot of moments with Percy and his mom, but a lot of those moments were unfortunately not funny, and they were very heartbreaking, very heavy. But I thought that the actress who played Sally, Percy's mom, Sally Jackson, she was phenomenal. And I believe I've seen her she's had parts in everything you can imagine. I want to say Mad Men, maybe.
She had a very familiar face.
She does have a very familiar face. And what was amazing was the fact that they were not on camera that many times, more than even a handful of times together at the same time. But for some reason, they just had a phenomenal bond. I don't know what it was, but they just had a great chemistry as mother and son. So there were a lot of moments. The one that stuck out to me was when she was trying to get him into, it was a flashback, she's trying to get him into a different school. She takes him to the restaurant and she gives him ice cream or something. She's like, I'll be right back. Let me just get the check. And she has this breakdown in the back. She's like, am I going to have to get in touch with his dad? I really don't want to do this. But that whole interaction was just heartbreaking. And for me too, it's just, it was heartbreaking to see how obviously these are gods who come onto the earth and they get these mortals, pregnant. But for me,
sultry nature of Olympus.
Am I wrong, or did you sense that Percy's father really loved his mother? Right?
I thought so too. Yeah, that's where my brain was going just now, because that scene where he comes down, and I think they've revealed at that point that Poseidon is Percy's father, but they haven't had a visual confirmation that okay, this guy is Poseidon. And actually, technically, I don't know if they ever really did. You just kind of assume that's Poseidon at the end of the show, at the end of the season. But that so. At this point, he comes down to this bar she's sitting at, she talks to him. I think it's kind of a flashback to when she's trying to decide whether to send him to camp.
Right.
And he comes down and he talks to her, and you do have that sense of care that he wasn't just going down to earth to sow his wild oats.
Right.
He actually he actually had genuine feelings for this woman.
Yes. That's what I got that impression too. It seemed genuine. It seemed like they were really in love, and then this just whole thing happened where he couldn't be there. That's really what I felt. And that's what I wrote down too, is the relationship, even though you only see them in one scene, Percy's mom and in Poseidon, it was just an amazing relationship for how many seconds it took up on the screen.
Yeah, it was between the three of them, really. Obviously, throughout the show, you never see the three of them together. But towards the end, you kind of have this understanding where Percy's been mad at his father all this entire show for leaving his mom and him not knowing who he is and all this. And at the end, Percy almost has this understanding why Poseidon did this. Why Poseidon could not be on Earth, or that sort of thing, where there was kind of this anger early on, and it's kind of an unspoken understanding. so to speak.
Right. It was almost a calming feeling where he just kind of realized that he was fine. It didn't matter what happened in the past. He was fine that his father was supporting him in the now.
Yeah, and that was transferable from Percy and Poseidon to, like you said, Percy and Sally. They have this loyal mother-son relationship to Sally and Poseidon, especially Evan in the bar scene. Like there was this kind of transferable, visible on-screen relationship between each party. It didn't feel like one was kind of left out. Like they kind of felt like they were always a family together, even though they obviously weren't.
Yeah, that's what's crazy is it was a flashback, so it was probably a few years before, right? So he's, I don't know, 10 years old. Who knows how old he is in the flashback, but what you have to assume is that she got pregnant. Poseidon was already gone, so she hasn't seen or talked to him in a decade, literally, since Percy was born, probably. And then they just kind of fall right back into their electric dynamic despite not seeing each other for years, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And that dials back to the whole like this was genuine. This wasn't Zeus just shooting out the sea.
Yeah, and I really hope that we see more of Poseidon and Sally interacting.
And I will say I felt kind of stupid because the logo of the show is the trident. And I'm sitting there, not having read the books, not having watched the prior movies. I'm like, who's Percy's mom? And then, when they do that, I forget what it's called, the calling or the coming or whatever it is, where the child knows who their godly
The
father,
claiming.
claiming. That's what it is. Thank you. When the child finds out who their celestial parent is, and the trident comes out of the water, I'm like, I feel like I knew that somewhere in the back of my head. I must have known that. And just like up to there, like,
you're like, who is his dad?
Yeah.
Come on, show us in this episode, please. Yeah, I think in the back of my mind when I was thinking, I'm like, okay, it's got to be Poseidon, or I don't think I remembered from the movies, or I don't even know if the movies mentioned it. I honestly don't remember, but I just kind of figured it out. And when I saw that he claimed him, it confirmed it for me. I was like, okay, that's what I thought. I was pretty sure, but I didn't even notice the logo.
Yeah, and real quick, going back to Grover, you mentioned like Grover has this relationship where he's his protector, where he's Percy's protector, but they still kind of maintain pseudo relationship where they're best friends. It's not like it never really feels like Grover's duty to Percy is unspoken, but it doesn't feel like an indebted thing. Like he feels like he's Percy's best friend the entire time, not like someone who's tied to just serving him as a slave or something.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not feeling a duty to be like, okay, I'm responsible for this guy for the rest of his life, I guess. It's not that sense of obligation. It is more like they're just friends. You saw them in school. They just hang out. That's just how things are. It was just funny that he had like hooves and
yes,
and go.
And of course, regular humans just can't see celestial things like that.
I guess
because
not.
they never like reference like if they like do some magical move to kind of like hide their godly things, like Chiron comes to the human world, you don't see a centaur body.
Right. Yeah, I guess people just can't see it. It's just not there to them.
It's like what was that? Polar Express?
What was it?
It was like Polar Express.
Oh, yeah. I think it's
children see the magic.
I think it's kind of like that. And speaking of other magical movies, at times I felt a bit like I could compare Percy Jackson to Harry Potter. So for me, it was another young boy whose parent or parents are famous or gifted. So it was like his reputation exists because of his parents. And it was the same thing with Harry Potter. So it was funny to me because this is how I feel about Harry Potter too. But it's weird because you have everyone in the world of Harry Potter and everyone in the world of Percy Jackson being like, "Oh my God, I've heard so much about you. You're supposed to be this powerful kid." And
just needs a little trident started itched into his forehead.
so it seems a little silly to me at times. And what I would compare it to is, to me, this is going to sound weird, but the show Riverdale, or even let's take the example of Harry Potter, right? So in Harry Potter, you have Voldemort constantly trying to kill Harry Potter. And so it's just kind of crazy to me that all these gods and all these adults have it out for Percy Jackson and want to get rid of him, want to hurt him, want to do something like, and that just is silly to me, because when you're an adult and you're trying to harm a child, you just look like a loser.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's extra weird because, like, in Harry Potter, it's at least known that he is this kind of all-powerful being coming from parents who had a lot of powers, and he's a threat to this villain. As opposed to Percy Jackson, where there's just kind of this weird vibe that these demigods are like muggles. To make the comparison, they're like dirty blood, and it's like, oh, but it's never really understood, like, why are the demigods this dirty blood type of segment of society, or like why do the gods not want these half god, half human kids around? You know?
Yeah, it's just to me, it's just funny because everyone in the world is just mystified by this kid in both Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. And it's funny because in both cases, it's a scrawny little kid who's going through puberty, and they're just like, "Oh my God, you have such powerful parents. You must be so powerful too." And it's just funny to me, at times.
Yeah, the only difference is it seems as if Percy's going to get the villain.
Yeah. It's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, especially with like the whole parentage thing. Definitely a bit comparable, and a kind of, I guess, like Harry Potter's raising by the Dursleys as kind of, live under the staircase, that sort of thing. I guess that could be comparable to when Percy goes to camp and they're kind of picking on him. It's like, oh, your dad, your parent is, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I mean, little does he know, like, that's gonna be found out, but they're just kind of busting his balls a little bit. I don't know, maybe like teenage hazing.
It's kind of some light hazing, like his cousins or whoever. That's for Harry Potter. That's his cousins, right? That he lives with.
Something
that are
like
just
that.
cruel to him. It's the same.
Back.
It's the same kind of hazing. The only difference is that Harry Potter's parents are dead, so they can't really support him. And with Percy, it's like doesn't she tell him that doesn't he think that his father was dead? Or did she just not tell him who it was? Like, you don't need to know about your dad.
I thought I figured whether it was said directly or not, I thought he just assumed that his father was dead or something like that.
I thought
kind of like, oh, he just ran out on the family. I don't care. I don't need to know this guy. But yeah.
I think I read that in the books. Maybe his mother tells him that his father is dead, but in the show, I think we were kind of left to assume that she had never told him. She just was kind of like, oh, you don't need to worry about him. He's not in our lives.
Speaking of which, when she does break the news to Percy, tell him the truth, and Grover runs in, she's like, Grover, you're early. Grover, you're early. And Grover's freaking out. He's like, oh, no. And like every 90 seconds, Grover.
Yeah, that was funny. I liked how Grover was in on it.
Yeah. Everyone knows what Percy.
They were trying to like facilitate the situation, like sit him down and be like, so about your life, things are not what they seem. Trying to do it in like an easy, gentle way.
Yeah. I actually didn't. I mean, it's funny. Like we're sitting here having this conversation, and I'm picking up on all the vibes you're putting down on it. But for me, I made more of, I guess, a kind of odd, I guess, kind of a one-to-one perception where I just saw it to the animated Disney film Hercules. Maybe it was just too many parallels. They're both Disney products. They're both Greek mythology, and that was a situation. Now, the actual mythology of Hercules, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but at least in the movie, it was a similar situation to Hercules being a demigod. Of course, it's the son of Zeus, so maybe that's why I kind of sat there like a dummy, waiting to find out who Percy's father was, just because I just figured it'd be Zeus like Hercules. But I kind of took one-to-ones to that just from the Greek mythology standpoint, and it's like, oh, okay, well, here's Athena, and oh, here's Hades, that's.
Yeah, I could see that with kind of it wasn't like he trained a lot, but there was a little bit of the training in there. Him being trained to take on something kind of more a quest.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like the hands-off type of training. Like everyone was kind of like, let's just point Percy in the general direction, and he'll kind of figure out how to do it. So like, we don't want him to go over here, because then he won't figure out what he's supposed to do. But if we push him over this way, then he'll start to put two and two together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I could definitely see a parallel between Hercules, just the mythology angle. And while we're talking about mythology, can we talk about all the creatures or legends of mythology that are in this show? Because there were a lot. So yeah, I mean, there were so many. I just have this massive list. I had a few favorite scenes with creatures. So the Medusa thing was cool. I thought that the woman who played Medusa was very captivating and mysterious, and that was a cool scene interaction. Anything where Poseidon was involved, I thought was cool because I have a trident tattoo. So I at one point was wanting to name a baby boy Triton after King Triton.
Little Mermaid?
Yes. But he's the king of the sea. So I've wanted to do that for years. And The Little Mermaid was like my favorite movie growing up. So yeah, I have a fascination with Poseidon. So anytime he was on screen, I was like, this is cool. And then another potential tattoo I wanted to get was of a Pegasus. So when they had the scene of the ginormous Pegasus on the roof of that building or whatever it was, that was really cool. I mean, then so we have so many different kinds of creatures. I mean, we could do a whole show just on like the monsters in Percy Jackson that are mythological monsters. You have the Minotaur is the one that sends Percy's mom into the underworld. Grover is a satyr. I looked up how to say it. Satyr. And
with a Y.
yeah. I wrote it phonetically for myself. Chiron is a centaur, which centaurs are cool.
I love centaurs.
Wasn't it isn't there a part in Fantasia with centaurs?
Oh, you know what? You're right. They were kind of dark, kind of like
Wait,
shadowy.
it's
Maybe.
not, it's not centaur. Is it centaurs?
Yeah, you might be right. I think you're onto it. I think so.
That was always my favorite part when I was a kid. It's the people who are half human and half horse or
Yeah,
something like
that's
that.
centaur.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
centaur.
Yeah, centaurs are badass.
Yes.
And another so a couple more monsters. We had the three-headed dog Cerberus. That's I don't know how that's pronounced. Towards the
That's
end,
right.
that was a pretty crazy CGI thing.
I thought that was a nice way they did that too, as far as them trying to sneak into the underworld and they get stopped by one of Hades' goons or whatever, and then Cerberus comes after them.
Yeah,
That ends up being a whole fight sequence.
I thought that was pretty well done, just special effects wise. Disney's got a unlimited budget, so
Yeah.
I'm sure they dropped millions just for that three-headed dog. But then we also had a bunch of the gods. So Dionysus is the god of festivities and wine. He was played by Jason Mantzoukas, he's done a lot of voices for stuff. You would recognize him. Well, you probably did recognize him. He was the one that kind of gave Percy a hard time when he first got to the camp.
Oh yeah, and it makes sense that he's the god of festivities and wine because he was drunk
Right.
all the time.
Because he was always drinking. So he was kind of some of the comedic relief. And then you had Lin-Manuel Miranda, who played Hermes. Hermes? I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Hermes. Yeah, and I like Hermes because Hermes they kind of set him as like an outcast in this show, and so he's out in Vegas. He's just kind of doing his thing, living. I would say philanthropic, but that's not it. Flandering life.
Oh,
yeah. Way different meaning. But so he's out in Vegas, of course, Sin City. He's gambling, he's drinking, he's having a grand old time. But like I always also think of Hermes as kind of like a little bit of a trickster, like a funny character. And like I don't know why he always reminds me of Puck.
Well, he's the messenger. So
yeah.
He's kind of like, I don't know, he's kind of a shit stirrer, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
That's just, he kind of needs to be where the information is, that kind of guy. But I thought it was hilarious when the kids were driving his car. That was one of the best scenes. All those Vegas scenes are hilarious.
Trying to get out of the garage. It's like, hit that one. No, don't hit that one.
Yeah, they're like, oh, kept scraping the walls. That was crazy. And then a couple other gods. We had Hades. The guy who played Hades was very familiar looking. I can't place what he was from, but he was an interesting character. Not really what I expected for Hades to look like. I feel like they went kind of the straight man route for him, didn't they? Kind of. He wasn't.
I would agree with that too. I saw him like I was expecting like this very dark, sinister looking character, and he just kind of looked like a businessman.
I was expecting like a goth guy. That's what I was expecting. Very gothic looking man. That's totally.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I was expecting. And then we saw Ares, god of war, which I know you wanted to talk about, and then Kronos was represented by this figure, wasn't really played by anybody.
And Kronos was he who shall not be
named. Pretty much. He was like a figure skeleton thing. And Zeus was played by Lance Reddick, who passed away earlier this year, I think. So
I think I heard that. Yeah.
From
Lance Reddick's from
Oh, I don't know what he's from. He's been in so many things, and I can't even drum up what he's been in, but he's definitely been in so many things. And I guess the plan from the author, the creator or writer of the series says that they probably won't replace him because I guess in the second book, uh Zeus doesn't really turn up a lot. So they're thinking that there's not even really a need to replace him.
Oh, okay. See, I was almost thinking just turn him into kind of this mythical cloud and just AI his voice or something.
Right, which
But
is
I guess that makes sense.
they might be able to get away with that. Similar to Kronos, they had a certain actor, and he looks familiar too from his picture on IMDb, but they had someone voice Kronos, but obviously they never showed him in human form.
Yeah, Kronos was just kind of this almost theory. Like you knew he was the bad guy, but there was never any interaction. All the interaction was just with Percy and everyone underneath.
Sort of like a entity ish.
Yeah. Like when they made that first Fantastic Four movie and they made Galactus a cloud.
Oh God.
It's like this is the best you can come up with.
Oh God. I can't even talk about the Jessica Alba Fantastic Four. I no.
Hey, that was Chris Evans before he was Captain America. Don't you forget that.
Well, he was also in Not Another Teen Movie, so he started from the bottom.
Yes, my first actually. Well, that's true. I can't get much lower than that, right? My, my first Chris Evans movie was actually Cellular, which is a thriller with Kim Basinger about a woman locked in an attic, and she only has one phone line out to the world to rescue her, and it goes to Chris Evans' cell phone.
I don't remember that one.
You gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. It is
Whenever you
special.
say cellular, all I think about is Phone Booth with Colin Farrell.
Oh gosh, that I don't even know if I got through that movie.
Oh, I definitely did. I love Colin Farrell. Yeah, so
Anywho.
I know I know you wanted to talk about Ares a little bit and what
Yeah.
I didn't know what you mentioned about him. Talk about anyone who's not a wrestling fan might not know who he is.
Which, well, I can't necessarily say I'm the biggest wrestling fan, but like I try to get into it a little bit. And I don't think he wrestles anymore. Although I guess The Rock's coming back, so who knows? Maybe he will. He was Edge from WWE, and I'm watching the show, and I look at it, I see his face, I'm like, I know who that is. I know that man's face. Who is this? Who is this? And I looked it up, and I actually recognize his face from the show Vikings. I never actually watched Vikings, so I just knew his face. And then I'm like scrolling, and I see Edge WWE, and I see that a couple times, like Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, that sort of thing. I'm like, holy shit, it's Edge from WWE. So I'm like, and then that's just like, you start to go down the rabbit hole. It makes sense why, because wrestlers are performers. It makes sense why someone would go into acting. The Rock went into acting. John Cena went into acting.
Right.
So now Edge is as well.
Yeah, they're putting on a show. I mean, he's one out of a handful of wrestlers who became actors now. John Cena, The Rock. He's at least the third, if not the fourth or fifth.
Yeah, I'm sure there's definitely more that aren't coming to our heads right now. But the thing with Ares, I always felt like he almost felt like a bit of a mischief maker in this show because he sets up Percy with the bolt. Like here, like I stole this, but I'm not going to tell you I stole it. I need you to go retrieve it for me, and then that kind of unfolds in the climax at the end, where he has to fight Ares and take his helm, and I guess that ships him back off to the underworld, and we'll see him later on. But it kind of makes sense that Ares would stir things up, being the god of war.
Right.
And it was a little hard to follow kind of the family lineage as far as like which gods were parents of what other gods, and then which one of them went down to Earth to spawn with humans and that sort of thing. But Hermes, it felt like he's Hermes, excuse me, Ares felt like he's the black sheep, and he's kind of stir up trouble between Olympus, the underworld, the demigods. He's just being the god of war. He's just trying to really mess up a lot of stuff down there.
I thought, as far as I remember, and I'd have to brush up on my mythology history a little bit, but I thought all of the major gods are children of Zeus.
That's what I thought as well, yeah.
Right? So
I
Poseidon,
right.
Hades, Ares, Athena. Am I missing one or two? Those are all children of Zeus.
Aphrodite, you said Hermes.
Aren't there 10 to 12 Greek gods?
I know there's quite a bit. I know there's quite a bit because I remember that little Macintosh game from elementary school.
I didn't know anything about that because I didn't have a computer until I was like 8 years old, and it was not a Mac, so I didn't know about that. But that sounds amazing.
That wasn't mine. That was in the school. That was actually in the school. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really cool. I would have loved something like that.
It was like Oregon Trail for mythology.
Yes. Oh man, you know what? And after this, we'll talk a little bit about our overall thoughts of the show, but I actually think watching this show made me want to watch other mythological things.
I'm sure, and they've done a lot Egyptian ones, and not so much having to do with mythology, just the times. But there's certainly been a lot of Egyptian set, ancient Egypt set, or Egyptian themed set films and shows.
Yeah,
The Mummy, one of my favorite guilty pleasures.
I mean, I went and searched mythology on Netflix, and I saw a few things that came up, but I might go back and watch the Percy Jackson movies. I might do that.
There was one. There was an anime on Netflix, wasn't there? That
the Blood of Zeus.
Into? Yeah, yes.
Yeah, there's a new season of that coming out in the spring. It was scheduled for soon, but now it's pushed back to May or June. So have to wait for that. But that show was amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like it's been a while since they did the first season anyway.
It's been at least 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So that one might need a little refresher.
Yeah, so we'll cover that one coming up in a few months. But so I obviously, as of a few days ago, they have not renewed Percy Jackson for a second season. But that being said, the creators would like to do 5 seasons, 1 for each book. So that sounds good that they're going to be sticking to the story arc of the books. And I really would continue to watch it if they renew it. I would have no problem continuing to watch it. I hope it's renewed. And I really thought that the majority of the season, although it was only 7 or 8 episodes, it really did pack a punch for me. Where I was a little underwhelmed overall was actually the last episode. I felt like the second to last episode and the one before that, maybe like the 6 and 7, were just full of action, and I don't know. I felt like it lost momentum in the last episode somehow.
I felt the finale was rushed.
Yeah.
Like, they must have been contracted for 8 episodes, and they're like, and maybe they like kind of wrapped everything up at 7, or they had some other things to tie up in, proverbial 9th episode, and didn't have the legal authority to do that, so they kind of like tried to squish a lot into the finale and do it very quickly just to make sure they got everything in. It had that kind of feeling for me.
They kind of glossed over a lot of stuff in the last episode, and it was supposed to be this big journey and this big quest, and they just kind of like were like, "Oh, here's the quest." Like,
Yeah.
It just seemed, yeah, I don't know. It didn't do it justice for me. I felt like the whole season was full of action and it was great. And then it just kind of fizzled in the middle of the last episode, which I wasn't that happy about. I was, geared up. I'm like, oh, it's the season finale. Let's go. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen. And it just was a little bit of a letdown. So I hope
that scene with Poseidon and Percy and Olympus, and then after that, it just kind of like, whoop, all done. I'm like, what?
right. It kind of took a back seat. It was structured very, very awkwardly. So I hope that they kind of balance it out if they do a next season. And I also thought the part with Percy's mother was very confusing.
Yeah, I did too. That I actually found extremely confusing, but at least they didn't try to resolve anything right away, because obviously, as for future seasons, we need some resolution on Percy's quest to find her. We need the trio made this pact that they were going to see each other again, so we have to kind of get them back together. And of course, I'd be obviously very excited to see what kind of relationship goes forward between Percy and Poseidon.
Yeah, and I mean, I was very confused just because when Percy was leaving the camp or whatever, he was like, okay, well, we'll meet up again, guys. We're going to meet up at the same time, same place next summer or whatever. And then he goes home to an empty house, and that ends up being like a dream. And then he wakes up for real, and his mom is like, oh, you getting ready for school or something? And then he's like, oh, I had this dream about Kronos. And she's like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Tell me what happened. So I'm like, okay, did
I black out?
If this really, they kind of did a got ya, by having that season before be a dream sequence and she wasn't really there. So is she really there? And if she is there, how did she get there?
I feel like he's got to be stuck in the underworld somehow.
Do you think so?
It's the only thing that makes sense based on how it ended. Like, he has to be stuck in the underworld. He has to be. Because he knows he had to go down there to get her.
I'm just a little confused by the ending. It looked like it was a happy ending, but you're just like, wait, is she really there?
But you know what? That gives us all the more reason to look forward to the next season.
Yes, it does. So we will cover that when it comes out. So knock on wood, it gets renewed, because we want more mythology in our lives.
Yes.
So we will offer mythology on our social media accounts, but for other cool stuff, make sure you follow along with us on Instagram and TikTok. I'm Binge the Ginge with dots between the words, no dots for TikTok. He is Nutmeg, the number 2, Palmetto like the bug. Give us both follows on there, then stay tuned to the show on all of our platforms. We've got YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Until the next real review, Red and Red signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind.
Hey guys. You ready to let the dogs out?
What?
Do what?
I'd like to be pimps from Oakland or cowboys from Arizona, but it's not Halloween.
Let the dogs out, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Who brought this guy along?
Slow ahead. I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
Grow up, Peter Pan. Count Chocula.
X never, ever marks the spot.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
You did. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
All right. Then you do us proud. Because I don't want no scrubs.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness. You weren't on any mercy mission.
Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love for you. None but love for you.
10. X marks the spot.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Blow up! Peace!
Fire, you son of a...
Hey, ain't too proud to beg.
Come on!
What?
It's not funny anymore.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not trying to be
references.
I don't. Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.